Right. So I think a lot of people are seeing the press release that we had done, and thank you for the help that you have done for that. We felt that it was really important for us to do a press release based on the Pope's apology to the people. And at this point in time, we do appreciate that that there was an apology from the Pope, right? And but we felt that also that there's still unresolved issues, and because a lot of people are asking, so not the Pope apologized, so now what, right? Well, first of all, thank you for the apology, but you neglected to mention all the mass graves. They didn't even acknowledge the mass graves. This is under the Pope that were found, and we felt that this whole issue of residential school and this whole issue of finding these mass graves and really is starting to go away again. And we forget the fact that there's 10,028 unmarked graves that were found on just 10 residential school sites. And I don't like to use the word school, because really a lot of the survivors, especially last week when they did the Indian residential school conference, they don't describe it as a school, more like assimilation camps, torture camps, or death camps. And really, that's an international crime. And the government of Canada, if they were to find something in other countries or within their own countries, unmarked graves, you would have the police all over it. You would have Canada demanding that there be justice. You would have families demanding justice. You would have governments demanding justice. We would have politicians demanding justice. But it seems like that the more grave sites that are unmarked, that are found, people tend to accept it as, oh, found another grave. And people forget that these were children. And that we had to make sure we find out what happened to these children. What are their names? Where did they come from? Whose family are they? How did they die? And why were they buried in unmarked graves? I was still saddened by the fact that many of these children were taken away from their families. And you wonder if that was your child being taken away from you, and you trusted people that came to take them away from you, and say, oh, we're doing this for the goodness of your community, for the goodness of your family, for the goodness of humanity and society. That's why we're doing this. Then you find out that they abused them. You found out that they sexually abused them. They tortured them, and they killed them. And then you wonder, what was the child thinking? Where's my family? Where's my community? Why are these people doing this to me? You wonder about that. That's really heartbreaking for me. And it's something that we wanted to raise and say, listen, thank you for the apology, but there's more work to be done. Now that we acknowledge that there was some wrong done, the next steps. Okay, let's find out what's happening. How many children went to school in these schools? How many are still surviving? How many have children? And how many did not make it home? How many are missing? Right? The unmarked graves have not told the full story, because there are still many missing children. we have 85 potential children that have died. Many of them are listed as boy, as girl. Maybe that's about 12 of them are like that, and maybe about good 40% of them have first names only. Now, where did these kids come from? Whose children were they? And the rest have first name and last name. But then again, and these are all Pimicikamak children. They're from our community, our nation. So we want to find out what's happening. And we want to know how many children went to school here, how many made it home, and are there more missing children? And if they are missing, where are they buried? Where are they? Did they get taken away like the 60 Scopes children and sent somewhere else? We need to find these things out. And yes, the Roman Catholic Pope made it a policy, but that seems to be where everything's directed at that person and that institution. But we can't forget the Canadian government. We can't forget the Crown, because Canada acts in right of the Crown. What about the Queen? Why is she not apologizing? Why is she not coming to Canada? What's their role in this stuff? They did the 1763 proclamation that nobody should enter our lands without permission from the Crown. But Canada did. It's a colonial government. And they took away our children without permission. Some were kidnapped. The stories we hear of kidnappings where children were swimming and people were coming and they said, oh, you want to go for a plane ride? And they're never to be seen again. And those are the recent ones. And I don't know how they did it back in early, because we had the first residence school in 1912. But anyways, I wanted to again, how do you say this? Bring to light this tragedy, this historical tragedy that our people went through, and to call on the government to ask for justice, social justice, criminal justice, whatever justice, to be undertaken. And it's not about just finding the graves. We need to know who these people are. And it's not just about getting compensation. We need to tell the whole story. And how do we go about the healing journey that we are on? Anyways, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Chief Monias. Those are very important comments that you're sharing there. And I just put some resources in the chat box if anyone is being triggered by any of what you're saying. And I also put those toll-free lines on our Facebook page as well. I think it's I think that these stories are triggering for a lot of people. So I hope you're doing okay as well, Chief, and getting support. And I'm going to ask Taylor from CTV News if she wants to ask you any questions now. And I'm going to hit record on this.
Recording in progress.
Hi. Well, first off, thank you very much for taking time to talk about this. I know some of the things you were saying were obviously quite difficult, so I appreciate it. So when it comes to actually identifying who these children are and things like how they died and whose kids they were, how are you going to find that information out?
Well, the good thing about the people that came to our community is that they documented everything, whether it be the Indian agent, the priests, the nuns, Hudson Bay, the workers that came here, the fur traders. So there's a lot of historical records that are out there, and we also have the BAM membership. The stats and also the membership listing of all the Pimicikamak citizens, but also other First Nations. And if we can find out the lineage, we have to look at somebody who's an expert on family and lineage record keeping and so forth, and then developing genealogy, family trees, and so forth. And we can kind of develop where that where everybody originated from, where they went, and so forth. And we can connect the family and see understand where they came from.
And do you know yet exactly where you'll be searching? I know that there are a number of spots, even just aside from the school's location, that are potential grave sites.
Yeah, well, we have a big footprint in Cross Lake, and where the residential school was situated. So we have something called the missing point, where the residents of the priests and the nuns were, where the school was, where the church was, where the farm and the barn was, where the gardens were, where the recreation systems were. So those are all situated on Mission Point, but also around that area where we have the airport. If you look at the Cross Lake, that's where the airport is. And going away from the airport, there's an area there that they had connected to that. That's a whole area there that looks at was plantations or gardening, and then going towards going out of town. So it's if you look at the size of a small reserve, it's probably that size of that. That's how big it was. We had 2 residential schools, and both of them burned.
How long do you think it'll take to do that initial search?
Well, the initial search itself is going to be what the terrain and what's going to be like, and we are really looking at the expertise of the people who are going to be doing the GPR and how they're going to do it, because it's a huge area. So that depends on the problem we have right now is that we have houses that are being developed in many of the areas. They're now populated with housing, and there's also an airport there, right? But there's a lot of stories in terms of whereabouts those possible unmarked graves were, and so forth. We have some islands that are adjacent to the airport area that there's 2 areas, and that need to be looked at. So you could be looking maybe a few months at least. It could take maybe about 6 months to a year, and getting the data, I don't know how long that takes.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the virtual mic over, but again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Taylor. So I'm going to call on Brittany from the Canadian Press now.
Hi, Chief Monias. Thanks for taking her questions today. Really appreciate it. Maybe if you could describe, so you had 2 residential schools. Were they both in the same location, or were they in separate locations?
They were both in the same locations. I mean, once it was one was burned down, they cleared the area, and they built that right in the close proximity there, the other residential school, and they both burned down. And it's in the same Mission Point area, so that would be the same area.
Okay, thank you. But they were technically known as the same school, or were they been 2 separate schools?
Same 2 subs, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Just wanted to clear that up. With these 85 names or partial names also that you've been able to identify, maybe are you able to explain how you were able to identify those?
Well, one of the things we did was that when we first started out, all the first 215 that were found, we started asking questions in terms of how we're going to go about doing this stuff. So we had some meetings, and then our local priest came forward and said, "You know what? Do you want to help?" And he was devastated by the news, of course, by himself. It's unbelief as well. But it's something we knew all along. But it wasn't a surprise to us that they would find these things, because when Judge Mary Singler went around and did all these interviews and stuff like that, he actually recommended that there be a search for the unmarked grave sites that were talked about by all the survivors. So we knew that there was something out there. But people didn't really believe. I mean, the general population didn't really believe. The Canadian government didn't want to believe it, and certainly didn't want to fund it at that time. So, of course, First Nations taking this on themselves, that they found that out. And we want to do the same thing. And the only first source we have is our own local priest and our own. He came forward and said, you know what? The diocese in DePaul, he wants to help. He'll cooperate in any way he wants. We want it. So we said, okay. So I invited my counselor, because I couldn't go there myself. So I invited my counselor, Shirley Robinson, to go to DePaul and retrieve the documents that they had. And that's where we found out there's 85 names, or I shouldn't say all, because they're not all names. 85 children that are documented to have died in the residential school. Unfortunately, some were actually nameless boy or girl, and they identified how they died. Some of them did. And it was really devastating, but we were glad to have them, right? But it triggered a lot of stuff for us. Wait. There was a lot of triggers, right, and that was happening for us, because when you read those things, it has an effect on you. Me and my wife, we read them, and we got in a fight for no reason, but we didn't understand what it was happening. Then finally said, wait, why are we fighting? And it was because something triggered us, and it's hard. And I think that's a lot of people are going to be like that out there, and are still out there like that, hurting, carrying the hurt, this baggage, of the unknown. It's like carrying an invisible bag in a backpack, and you don't know what it is, but it's something that's there. You're carrying that burden, and we want to find out what it is, and we want to unload it, right? And that's the thing we want to do. So it's you kind of get lost in what I'm trying to say here, but we are trying to find the truth. What happened? We know the truth, but we don't know the details. And I know it's going to bring a lot of hurt once we find out the details. But I think the more we know, and the more we can deal with what we know, and be able to deal with it, and to move on, right? So, yes. Hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate, it's a topic that can bring up lots of different emotions in different ways. So I appreciate your response. I think just my last question right now is, do you know when you guys are going to be starting the GPR, or has that already started?
No, that hasn't started yet. We're actually having our team will determine that, and they'll deal with that. They're going to set the dates as to when they're ready and when they're going to be doing all this stuff. So we have a really good team, and they're working with elders, and they're also working survivors, knowledge keepers, and also some good administrative people too. So it's a big team, and once they know what they're going to be doing, then they're going to let us know, and they're kind of driving the bus right now, and we are along for the ride to see where it takes us, and then we'll make decisions as we move along.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. So the third reporter who would like to ask questions, I believe, is Michelle from Global News.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Chief, for speaking with us today. I guess my question is, what's next for you guys? I know there's a lot that you don't know and a lot of work ahead of you, like you said. But do you feel supported moving forward, doing this investigation and everything that you have, all of the work you have ahead of you? Do you feel like you have support in that? Are you looking for outside supports? What about that?
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. We are getting a lot of support from our elders, and that's what mainly counts, right? And our community is really big on self-determination, self-sustenance, and looking after ourselves. It's one of the things that we've been taught as young people is that nobody's going to come and rescue you. Most likely, nobody's going to come and help you. So we have to develop the resources that we need to get through this. We have to fight for the resources to help us find the things we need to know. But we do have, our elders. We do have our traditionalists. They're looking at mental health. We have our health department that's looking after mental health for our people as well. And we also have a local team of led by John Papanagas on the Indian Residential School program in Cross Lake. So we have those people that are helping here, and they have some experience, and we have a wealth of knowledge and human resources in our community that we count on. The only thing that we count on is basically that things we don't have, like people who have expertise on CPR, or people who have expertise in terms of research, and that will let us have access to the research, like universities, the Government of Canada, Statistics Canada, maybe the membership clerk at or manager at Indigenous Service Canada. And we, of course, we expect help from the churches, right? The church institutions, like the Roman Catholics, also the United Church. And we can't just say that it's all Roman Catholics. So we did have United Church operate residential schools. We did have government run residential schools, and they're all doing the same thing, right? So we're hoping that they cooperate with us to make sure we have access to everything that we need.
Thank you so much. That's my only question.
Okay, is there anybody else who has any questions?
Hi there, Daryl Stranger, APTN National News here. I just had a question. I know in the release it said there was going to be a community gathering once restrictions allow and they're lifted and that sort of thing. How important is that going to be for the healing journey for the community?
Well, I think it's very, very important. In the community, we have the local IRS team, and they've been holding since the start that we had awareness by doing the walk from the mission point to our government office here. And we had elders participate in those walks. We visited the mass grave. That's the one mass grave that's in our grave site that we know of. There's a memorial there. We also had feasts to commemorate the people that were lost. So there's a lot of conversations that are happening amongst our people. It's dialogue happens, and dialogue leads to ideas. Dialogue leads to problem solving. Dialogue leads to healing, and also dialogue leads to learning and developing information packages for our families, but also for our youth and young people that are not aware of what's happening out there, but that will be impacted by these things. Or if they are being impacted already, it certainly shows up in child and family services. I mean, the residential school syndrome, we had to make sure that we made that awareness happen. But it's very, very important right now because we have some kind of forum to deal with, and not just open, but also the plan in terms of how we're going to deal with those once they're open, so people are not left alone to deal with these things. And the only way we can do that is by bringing the people who have survived and who have coping mechanisms and who have moved on as well.
That was my only question. Thank you very much.
Okay, if anyone else would like to ask questions, this is your chance.
Would I be able to ask one more?
For sure.
Yeah, I understand that there are some houses in an area that would need to be searched. Just how is that going to be done? Do you know yet?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I understand that there are some houses in an area that'll need to be searched. The 25 houses on land that was previously used by the residential school. How will that land be searched?
Well, I asked that same question because there's structures that are there. The good thing that they said is that they're not that, the footprint that they have is not that deep into the ground and so forth. And that if there is something there, that the ground penetrating system around those structures should be able to pick up something, especially around the areas where it's suspected that there may be unmarked graves. So the answer to that, I don't really know, but I know that that's what I've been told.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, did everybody get what they need? Or is there any more questions from media? Everybody's very quiet today.
I'll just say thank you, everybody, for showing an interest in this this whole thing, and being our voice. I thank you for being our voice and carrying our voice and our stories and our messages to the general public. You guys are very important to us, and I hope we hope that we continue to talk and maybe share some information, and maybe even for you guys to come to the community if we should have some openings where we have sharing or conferences and so forth. And of course, if there's something private that that'll be respected, of course. Without you guys, that a lot of this information wouldn't go out, and that and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for showing up and being here and listening to me. And pardon my breakdown a little bit there. Then it's hard for a lot of people there. And again, just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of my chief and council, my four council. We have women's council, elders council, and youth council here as well. On their behalf, I thank you.
Yes, I echo what you just said, Chief Monias, and I thank you for your time as well and making yourself available to the media to share this story. So I hope everyone has a good day and take good care of yourself.
Hey, Usani.
Go, Sani.